Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. It's time for another edition of Longhorn Weekly. This edition is brought to you by Bluebird Organizing. We'll tell you about Perry Rickard and that great organization here in just a moment. But CJ, we got a lot on tap this week. We got spring ball, pro day, got a huge recruiting decision coming up in women's basketball. We've got a new men's basketball coach. Baseball's on fire. We'll talk about as much as we can here on this episode. But spring practice starts on Tuesday on the channel over at ontexasfootball.com. We've talked a ton of spring practice. So CJ, the time is now. Give me one thing. What is the one thing that you want to hear about when the first week of spring practice is in the books?
Arch Manning. Want to hear all about him. And I know Texas has a number of positions that are up for grabs right now. We'll talk about that all the way throughout spring ball. But the time is now, right? It's Arch Manning's era is officially upon us, right? This is kind of what we've been waiting for here at Texas. Obviously, with Quinn, we knew that he was a great quarterback. We knew that there was also some limitations with him at the quarterback position. With Arch, it feels like it's a fresh slate. You know, the unknowns are unknown at the moment, but the potential and the promise is certainly sky high. So for him to be that guy on the field, but also to be that guy in the huddle and in the locker room, to be that face right now, that's all I want to hear about right now. We'll figure out everything else from now until August 30th, Jeff, but I'm over the moon to hear about those first couple practice reports about Arch Manning, how he's slinging it, how he's leading the team. That's going to be really exciting for me.
I'll tell you what, I'm excited about Arch. I've talked about that a lot. I think everybody watching this, listening to it, the entire ontexasfootball.com staff, we're all excited about Arch Manning. But I really hope we get to see a little bit, because I want to see or at least hear about how the new coaches are adjusting and what they're like at practice. Because you look at the guys that are leaving, specifically Tashard Choice brought a ton of juice to the practice field. And, we know Bo Davis did, and, we know Jeff Choate did. And we saw last year, whether it was Kenny Baker or Johnny Nance, and we're like, okay, yeah, those hires look like they're going to work. I want to feel the same way about Chad Scott. I want to feel the same way about Mark Orfe and Kenoto Hudson, going from an analyst role kind of off to the side to now being on the field. And you haven't experienced this, CJ. I hope you get to experience what a Texas football practice is like, where Dwayne Akina's got the loudest voice on the field and helping set the tone on defense. I'm excited about that, because we talk about this being a really big teaching spring for Texas. Sark has said that. I think we know that from the outside looking in. I want to see how these coaches teach and what it's like with this new staff and how they come together. So there's a lot to be excited about, but man, these new hires, specifically Coach Akina coming back, it's going to be fun to see how this all comes together.
Yeah, not on top of that, I mean, you talk about Akina coming back. Who else makes an appearance on the 40 acres, right? I think that's going to be really interesting to watch, not just in recruiting, but former players. Because, Jeff, to your point, seeing how these guys coach will also kind of give them an instance of what they could become under Dwayne Akina specifically. But I'm excited for that. A number of recruits will be filing in the spring as well. So to your point, how do they coach? How do they get along with their room? What kind of techniques and developmental traits can they bring and showcase that in a single practice? That's a big selling point for a number of high recruits right now that will be making their way to Austin. But yeah, I'm with you. The one guy I'm specifically looking for is Mark Orfe, a Texas guy from Houston coming back to the state. He has some familiarity with this group. What does that look like at cornerback as you look to replace the best defensive back in all the country, Jahdae Barron, going to the NFL? So his work's cut out for him. Let's see what those traits and developmental steps forward look like with this cornerback group.
Speaking of guys coming back to the 40 acres, a lot of guys come back for Pro Day. We'll talk about Pro Day here in just a second. But before we do that, let's tell you about Perry Rickard and Bluebird Organizing. If you're thinking about using Bluebird Organizing, ask yourself a few of these questions. Is your wife feeling overwhelmed? Does she consistently mention how she wishes she could find items more easily? Or how she wants to park her car in the garage, but there's no space? Or maybe she complains about tripping over all of her kids' toys. Don't I know that feeling? Are you, as her husband, feeling at a complete loss as to how you can help? Well, spring cleaning is here. It's that time of year. Mother's Day is just around the corner. Give your wife the gift of a lifetime with a customized organizing session from Bluebird Organizing. Perry, the owner of Bluebird Organizing, will come into your space without judgment and give your wife the organized kitchen, closet, playroom, and or garage of her dreams. Plus, Perry will take all donations for you at the end, leaving you and your family ready to enjoy the new space. It's time to give your wife a gift she'll love for years to come. Call or text 737-346-7779 to book your free in-person consultation today. Again, that's 737-346-7779. And again, a big thank you to Perry Ricard and Bluebird Organizing for sponsoring this edition of Longhorn Weekly. All right, CJ, let's get on to Pro Day. We've talked about some of the guys that we want to see, some of the guys that have times, runs, jumps, whatever it is to go back and redo, or maybe they didn't do them in Indianapolis at the Combine that they're going to do coming up on Tuesday. My thing with Pro Day is this, CJ. We've talked about how big of a day it is for guys like Silas Bolden and David Benda, the guys that missed, Bill Norton, a guy that probably wants to try his hand at the NFL, the guys that weren't invited to the Combine. But the more we go into Pro Days, CJ, the longer we're around, the longer I've been around for Pro Days, and I've always counted, I don't know how many this is going to be for me. It just shows you I've been doing this way too long. It seems like the interviews are a bigger deal with Pro Day now because the teams can come in, they meet with guys the night before. I think it gives teams a chance to, hey, this guy's on his own campus. He's probably, still has his apartment in Austin. He's in his surroundings. Let's get to know this guy a little bit better before we decide we want to make this multi-million-dollar investment into somebody. Yeah, it's going to be a big day to see Quinn Ewers throw the football. But, CJ, the bottom line for me in that vein I just talked about, I want to see which coaches and GMs and NFL personnel come out because last year, it's been a while since we've seen NFL head coaches at Pro Day. But last year, Mike McDaniel from the Dolphins was there. D'Amico Ryans from the Texans was there. Shane Steichen from the Colts. Brian Schottenheimer, who's now the head coach of the Cowboys, he was there as an assistant coach and came away really impressed with Quinn Ewers. By the way, that Cowboys Quinn Ewers chatter is getting a little bit louder the closer we get to the draft. So that's what I want to see, CJ. How many NFL organizations turn out and who shows up from those organizations?
Yeah, Zach Taylor, another head coach of the Bengals, made his appearance down in Austin as well. Look, I think the rumor, the whisper around Austin last year was about 103, 105 execs, scouts, head coaches, GMs made their trip down to Austin. I would bet that number is even bigger this year, right? When you talk about Kelvin Banks, Matthew Golden, Jahdae Barron, all first-round caliber guys, not to mention a quarterback that's creeping into that day two conversation, Jeff. That's a big-time decisions with a lot of draft capital at stake. These guys got to make sure that they get the decision right. They got to come see him in person. To your point, they got to talk to him, get a feel for him, because that's, as we talked about, that's a big chunk of change that these guys are in position to be slotted for in the NFL draft. That's a decision that people get fired over if they don't make the right one. So I would imagine that number's 110, 115. We'll see how high it actually goes. But I'm expecting a full house 100%. And who might surprise in a situation like this? David Benda, I think, is going to run very well. I think Gunnar Helm is in a position to rebound from his sprained ankle, rolled ankle from the Combine, but also Isaiah Bond. I mentioned this last night on the Sunday night live stream. Look, Isaiah Bond ran a 4.38, right? It's a good time, right? It's a really good time. But for Isaiah Bond, who came in expecting to be in that conversation for one of, if not the fastest overall players in the Combine, I think he's ready to shoot for the low 4.3s. I would be very shocked if he didn't do anything but the last 3 weeks, but practice that get off on the 40-yard dash and see if he can, knock off some of that time that he ran off of in Indianapolis. That's what I'm looking forward to.
NFL Network did the side-by-side with Xavier Worthy, his 40 at the Combine last year, Matthew Golden's 4.29, and Isaiah Bond. And the immediate difference you noticed was Isaiah Bond just standing straight up off the start. It's like, man, if he'd have just had some better technique, he'd have shaved a couple of hundreds off of that 40 time easy. So we'll see if the technique is better and what he runs. And CJ, I love that Sark is piggybacking this off of the first spring practice, because how'd you like to be, Justice Terry, Michael Terry III, Cade Phillips? You go out there for your first spring practice and there's like scouts from every NFL team out here at my first practice in college. Just not even a camp practice, just a spring practice where we're just walking around here in helmets and jersey tops and shorts. So Sark has got the buzz going for Texas football right now. a school record number of guys at the combine, could be double-digit draft picks this year. Probably it's trending that way that it's going to be another year with double-digit draft picks. Texas is CJ, like I haven't seen it before in my lifetime, become an NFL hub for teams where Texas, it is a place where you've got to go in the spring for pro day. And if you get a chance to check out some of the youngsters, you can do that too. So Sark making it kind of a one-stop shop for NFL teams. I dig that so much because a lot of these guys that we talk about, especially some of the underclassmen or even guys, like DJ Campbell that are true seniors, a lot of these guys are going to be teams that these teams already have on their board for the 2026 draft that, hey, if we're looking, if we figure we might need a guard, hey, what does DJ Campbell look like right now? Let's start tracking him now as he gets his senior year going. That's just one example, but a lot of guys on this roster, CJ, that are candidates for that 26 draft.
Yeah, definitely. I know to add to that, all these scouts being around the campus, if there's one area of the Texas football program that's really going to thrive as a result of this, it's that marketing department, right? The media creatives, making sure that they showcase what goes on at these pro days, at these spring practices, and making that uber attractive to 26s and 27s that will be filing into Austin for unofficial visits over the next month or so. So that it's going to be, again, just a big billboard, a big marketing campaign for the program. And with Texas potentially having 24, 25 draftees in 2-year span, yeah, that conversation about development is going to be at the forefront of the Texas football program. Maybe louder, maybe ramped up more than it's ever been.
Yeah, I think Sark would love to say, put out the recruiting materials. Hey, day one of spring practice, all 32 NFL teams were at our practice. How many other schools around the country can say that? So it's definitely a good time to be a Texas Longhorn, and good times are ahead here on the channel and over at ontexasfootball.com. I want to remind you real quick, get over there right now because we're talking about the start of spring practice. We got 2 really big unofficial visit weekends coming up throughout spring ball. Get over there right now. 1 year of access if you use the promo code OTFOG, 1 year of access for $49.95 at ontexasfootball.com with that promo code. Once spring ball's over, you've got June official visits, which CJ will be hanging out in the bushes, the airports, wherever, getting everybody the scoop on that. SEC Media Days will be here before you know it. After that, then we'll be in a camp and what should be a heck of a season, year 2 in the SEC for Sark and the Longhorns. So again, OTFOG, $49.95, get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com. And CJ, what else we've got going on at ontexasfootball.com? We're talking about the new era of Texas men's basketball. Props to our guy Jerry Hamilton. Jerry painted the picture about as clear as anybody could.
Oh yeah.
He posted early Sunday, hey, if there's movement today, it's going to be Sean Miller, and it shouldn't be that long after one announcement the other is made. Sure enough, Rodney Terry's out mid-morning on Sunday. By the time everybody sits down for dinner, Sean Miller's the new head basketball coach at Texas. I was on the live stream with Jerry on Sunday to break down the breaking news. CJ, I want to get your thoughts because I don't think you've given – I know you were on the live stream Sunday night, but let's get your thoughts real quick just on your take on what Sean Miller's hiring means for the Texas men's basketball program.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's an opportunity for Texas to bring in more NBA talent while also seeing a good product on the court. And what I mean by good product is a fun offense with competitive defense. You start looking at some of these guys at Arizona that he was able to produce and develop. Look, great guard play takes you a long way in the tournament. And I know that you have the conversation about never reaching a Final Four, but hey, Steve Sarkisian never won 10 games as a head coach before making it to Texas. Could that change? Will that change? We'll have to wait and see. But I know that there is a lot of NBA talent. I know that there are some really, really good college basketball players on that team. And with the way that the SEC is looking right now, you got to be able to score. You got to be able to be led by your guards because as Texas saw late in games this year, if you don't have that ball movement, if you don't have that command at the point, you're going to be seeing a lot of isolation basketball, and that's not going to win you games when you play good teams. So that's what I'm encouraged for. If Texas had a TJ McConnell, if Texas had, a DeAndre Ayton to even play next to, that's huge for a program. And I think right now moving forward, you can start to expect that NIL buy-in to increase. You can expect that fan engagement to increase. I'm all for the hire. I'm excited for it. Now we get to see what those next steps will be next fall.
Yeah, I've mentioned a few things, and I'll just re-rack them. If you've been at ontexasfootball.com, you probably saw my column on Sunday after the news came out. I had 3 thoughts on Sean Miller's hiring, and I'll just run them down here real quick. 1, international recruiting. You mentioned DeAndre Ayton, Lauri Markkanen, Josh Green from Australia, Sean Miller really hit international recruiting hard when he was at Arizona. With the Texas brand, I'm in agreement with Jerry. With the Texas brand, you can really expand and go international and get talent in here. Don't leave any stone unturned. If there's one thing people should have learned from Steve Sarkisian, he has not left any stone unturned when it comes to talent acquisition. Right. I'm expecting Sean Miller to do the same. And CJ, I'm a firm believer in international recruiting because, I was covering Baylor when Scott Drew took that program over, and the stigma around the Baylor program, scholarship restrictions, it was really hard for him to look at a list of top 100 recruits in the country and try to convince them to come to Waco. They hit international recruiting hard. And throughout the years, that's been one of the staples of Scott Drew's teams. They've competed for Final Fours. They've won conference championships. They've won a national championship. And even today, international recruiting is a big part of what they do. If it's good enough for Baylor to go win a national championship with it, it should be good enough for Texas to try to compete in the SEC. I think, too, you mentioned the style of play. Offense is the name of the game in the SEC right now. You've got to be able to score points. And you go look at Sean Miller's track record at Arizona and what he did with that first Xavier team that lost to Texas in the Sweet 16. That was a top 10 team in the country in points per game. They were also one of the best teams in the country in terms of adjusted offensive efficiency. They were top 10 in the country, and they were top 35 in the country in adjusted tempo. So when he's got the pieces, they can play a really exciting brand of basketball. And then I agree 100% with what you just said. Great guard play. When you look at the post TJ Ford teams, which that's the high mark, is that 2003 Final Four team led by TJ Ford, who was the National Player of the Year. Look at the other really good Rick Barnes teams. The 05-06 team had Daniel Gibson. The 2007-08 team was led by DJ Augustine, had A.J. Abrams on that team also. Yeah. The Elite Eight team a couple of years ago that RT got to the Elite Eight, look at three-headed monster with Serge Jabari Rice, Marcus Carr, and Tyrese Hunter. Even you had a team that won 28 games with Corey Joseph leading the backcourt. Rick Barnes had a team that won 24 games. The last NCAA tournament win this program had under Rick Barnes was with Isaiah Taylor, an NBA caliber point guard. So great guard play not only wins in March, it's won at Texas. If Sean Miller can bring that, then I think people will be very, very happy with the basketball program, the product on the floor in years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And even to build off of that, right? Derek Williams went second overall in 2011 from Arizona, right? Great guard. You start looking more into who he's been able to produce, a Zeke Naji, a Josh Green, Nico Mannion, who, these are all back into the first or second round guys, but that's better than what Texas has been able to put on the floor for 15 years, Jeff? I talked about it last night. Do you remember the last time that Texas had a guard drafted in the NBA? We've talked about one and dones. We've talked about some of these bigs. 2011, Corey Joseph.
Yeah, wow.
It's been quite a long time since there's been that level of guard play at the University of Texas. And we've seen that with Sean Miller at Arizona, not just commanding the offense, but a number of these guys also received all Pac-12 defensive status as well. That's going to be encouraging to see that perimeter defense improve, because that was also a point of contention this year is, hey, three-point shooting allowed for the Texas defense. That's got to tighten up, and I think it will again under Sean Miller.
Let's flip over to the women's side, CJ. Coming up on Tuesday, a massive decision. Aaliyah Chavez is going to make her decision. She's down to Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Texas. There was some chatter that she might show up at the Texas second-round NCAA tournament game at Moody Center against Illinois. Our Blake Monroe shot that down over at ontexasfootball.com. Regardless, CJ, she's going to make the announcement on Thursday. Where do you think Aaliyah Chavez is headed?
Well, it's one of two schools for me. Now, we've also seen situations like this in women's athletics where a Texas Tech who lingers around might just come out with an offer very late in the decision-making process and make it so that it's impossible to say no to, right? We saw that last year with Nigeri Kennedy, the Stanford pitcher. Now, will that happen again with Aaliyah Chavez? We'll see. But right now, Texas or Oklahoma for me. And again, I think playing at a Nike school is important. Jerry Hamilton has mentioned that several times. I think that he also has a good grip on where this might be headed, as well as Blake Monroe. So again, we got it on Texas football, but I think it's very hard to say no to where Texas is right now as a program, specifically as a one seed, advancing in the NCAA tournament and having a very advantageous brand to build around. That's going to be really interesting. But again, that decision will make or break a recruiting class. Texas already with an Aaliyah of its own and a top 5 player in the country already.
You think about the potential to spread the floor with Madison Booker and Aaliyah Chavez. mean, we're talking about a Texas team. They're a number one seed in the tournament right now, a season that's not done. But I'm already thinking about next season. Could Texas be the preseason number one team in the country? If they get Aaliyah Chavez, and depending on who decides to come back, if Rory Harmon decides to come back, Aaliyah Moore could potentially come back for another year. This could be a roster that is national championship caliber next season. It might be without Aaliyah Chavez. With her, it certainly is. So we'll be tracking that decision over at ontexasfootball.com and here on the channel. Finally, CJ, Texas baseball team, big weekend for Jim Schlossnagle and company. They dropped the Friday night game to LSU, but they come back and win the next two, get a series victory over the number 2 team in the country at Dish Falk. That Saturday night game, I was there at Dish Falk. It felt like a super regional game. It's one of the best home atmospheres for a Texas baseball game I've experienced. And that's saying something because Texas baseball fans, they show out, they're knowledgeable, they're rowdy, they get into it. So some great crowds at the Dish. But CJ, I keep saying it. I've said it on Bases Loaded. I've said it on the site. At some point, this team's going to hit a wall because you're going to play really good teams in the SEC. But so far, so good. And I like where this team is mentally because Schloss was saying, hey, it means for one weekend, we were really good. Now the challenge is, can you go to Columbia against Missouri next weekend and do the same thing? So taking it one inning, one game, one pitch at a time. I like where this team is at mentally. I like the fact that they got up off the mat and had really 2 strong performances Saturday, Sunday. It's a good time to be a Texas baseball fan right now.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I look at that Saturday game as one where you just got hit and you got hit and you got hit and you just kept getting up, right? There's a number of times where LSU made plays. They made scored runs. They took leads, and it didn't matter. Texas had an answer each time. That's a sign of a good team, especially at home, right? You want to defend home turf. Texas taking the series against LSU is a great sign. But Sunday was really encouraging for me, Jeff. And I know that we've talked about on Bases Loaded with Blake Monroe. Who's going to take over that Sunday role as your Sunday guy on the hill? Is it Ruger Riojas? I don't know. But I was really encouraged with what he put on the hill Sunday afternoon. And, of course, the timely hitting. You know, Max Ballou just doing what he does. 4 runs batted in on Sunday as well. Texas answered the call, and they took care of business. Now, to the point, how can they keep that moving forward is going to be the big question. 19-3, back in a 2-game win streak. Let's see how they build on the midweek. But a really encouraging start, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and Schloss said they would love Dylan Volantis to be a starter right now, but right now the role they need him in is as a bullpen guy, whether that's long relief, short relief, come get a couple quick outs. Ruger Riojas is kind of in the same deal. Like they had a role they envisioned for him at the start of the year, but it just so happened, hey, we need you to go make your first start at Dish Falk and have it be against the number 2 team in the country with a series tied. Go start the rubber match, see if you can get us a win. And he did. Ruger Riojas was fantastic on Sunday. And you mentioned Max Ballou. He had kind of a tough weekend, and I felt going into Sunday like he's got to be due for a big hit. He had an opposite field liner down the third base side where the third baseman made a great play and it kind of got robbed. Schloss told him, hey, you got it. Just stick with it. Trust what you're doing. The next at bat, he hit a home run. And CJ, when you hit one like that, you deserve to stare it down and start your walk to first base when you hit one that gets out of the park as fast as that one did. So I think that was 403 was the distance on that Max Ballou homer to right. Whatever it was out of the park pretty quick. I've seen very few balls get out of Dish Falk as fast as that one did. So props to Max Ballou, Dylan Volantis, Ruger Riojas, the whole Texas baseball team. Sitting pretty right now in the SEC standings, but every week is a dogfight in this league, and they've got Missouri coming up this weekend. Shout out also to Mike White and the Texas softball team getting a home sweep of a ranked Auburn team over the weekend. The ladies are off to a great start in SEC play. They're rolling. Times are great right now, CJ. Everybody's optimistic. Every Texas fan should be optimistic about every sport on the 40 acres right now. It's a great time to be a Longhorn. Once again, thank you to Bluebird Organizing for sponsoring this edition of Longhorn Weekly. Also, don't forget to get over to ontexasfootball.com, promo code OTFOG to take advantage of our $49.95 price for 1 year of access on the site. And stay locked into the channel. We'll have all the news, notes, and nuggets throughout this week, whether it's spring practice, Aaliyah Chavez, pro day, whatever it is, we'll have it for you here on the channel and over at ontexasfootball.com. For CJ Vogel, I'm Jeff Howe, and until next time, welcome.